You better be ready because we're rolling. Hey.
Hey, I thought you were going to kiss me.
Cheers. I was.
I thought. You could tell.
And then I have to wash it down with coffee. All
Ew,
right.
boy germs. Oh.
Welcome to the Jon and Tara podcast. I'm Jon.
I'm Tara.
This is our podcast. Subscribe.
Oh, yeah.
Share. Subscribe. And
like please.
Like.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
What are we talking about today?
I thought you had this planned. You know, you're the planner.
Ready, set, go.
Okay. There were some earlier podcasts that I did on wifey school that you mentioned you had some commentary about. Or did we get into that Deloney podcast that we were listening to before we got here?
Let's see if I can find the short, and we'll share the short.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
That will make it make sense, so people can understand. You should entertain people.
Well, I read your mind just as you were saying that. So it was interesting because actually
I found it.
See, there you go. There we go.
My husband and I have been married for 3 years, but we just had a son who's about a month and a half. And my husband expressed interest of being a stay-at-home parent. And I'm just wondering, if this is the right decision for us financially, for the development of our child, and
you don't respect your husband. Why not? I can hear it. You're trying hard. Just say it.
Oh my gosh!
Hold on, Maria.
Yes.
We are in a everything's got to be delicate world, and you're not allowed to just say things because I don't want to sound like we have to blow by all of the things you're supposed to say and not say. Get right down to your guts.
I just don't think he's worked really hard for something he really wants until our son came along.
Okay, stop right there.
That's the gist of it.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. It was a good one. I mean,
That's the short.
That's the short. There's another 20 minutes of the whole thing, and I think there are a couple things I think that Dr. Jon did well. I like that he just called it out, not necessarily her. He did call her out, but he also called out kind of in society where, we just and I'm so guilty of it. I do this a lot, and I think women especially do it a lot.
Yeah.
Which is just skirting around the issue. Now you're totally not a skirter, so I appreciate this about you. Even though sometimes
I enjoy skirts. I enjoy skirting.
Even though I cringe a lot of the times when it happens, I appreciate it at the same time.
Oh, when it happens to you.
Well, or around me. Sometimes I'm like, ooh, I wouldn't say it like that, but then I'm not you.
Yeah. Every time you say something, I think I wouldn't say it like that.
You probably do.
But I don't cringe because you're you and I'm me.
And it's better.
Yeah. So anyway, it turns out her husband's a construction worker that's super hard worker. Works very long days, sometimes like 16-hour days. And he said he wanted to be a stay-at-home dad. And she had said in the podcast that he probably doesn't understand the stresses that there will be on him staying home taking care of a 1.5-month-old.
So you started making kind of a skit, which I thought was actually really funny because at first Dr. Jon didn't even know too. He's like, well, what does he do for work? Thinking maybe
he's lazy.
And
he didn't know. She made it sound like he wasn't working.
Yeah, kind of.
And then she's like, oh no, he's a totally hard worker, and he's 12 hours a day, 16 hours a day, comes home, is totally tired, can't do much. But this would be a whole different stress he's not used to. And I started laughing, and I'm like, okay, this guy's on the construction site. First of all, he's going to a construction site. Second of all, he's got a foreman at the construction site. Doesn't want to run into him. Third of all, he's probably a manager over other guys, so he doesn't want to run into those guys either, but he has to, because two of those guys will be in a fist fight when he shows up in the morning. Another guy will have thrown in a guy off the roof earlier that morning, and there'll be 2x4s flying, there'll be hammers flying. Watch out for the nail guns, and depending on what construction site they're on, right? Then all of a sudden, if they're on a major construction site like a skyscraper, then you got to watch out for guys falling into the cement footings, and or people being put in the cement footings on purpose. So anyway, no, this guy, handling a 1.5-month-old, handling one child at any time is easy.
No, I think it's important that
I was
you
a single dad for 12 years.
Some background, so yes.
So it's not hard at all, and I worked full time.
And you spent long periods of time, I'm sure, taking care of him, not just like an hour here and there.
Certainly, no, yeah, we'd be out in the parks, and we'd go different places, and I had motorcycles, and he rode on the motorcycle with me. I had a Jeep, we'd take the top off and go cruising and play Will Smith songs, and because he didn't swear. Will Smith didn't swear, so when my kid was little, yeah, lots of fun things, lots of biking, just different things like that. So and at home I cook, so cooking is not a problem because I have to eat too, so I had to feed myself. I'm a whiz in the kitchen, and we took care of one of my employees' kids one time, and they have 4 kids, and we moved into their house for a week and a half, and we took care of their 4 kids, and it was not a problem. So,
all right, I'm not going to comment on that because I know that's a different scenario from being their actual parents and stuff.
Sure.
But I think a couple things that Dr. John pointed out well is that, first of all, it's just been 6 weeks. They have a 6-week-old. I mean, you're
she's
barely
freaking out about the next 18 years.
Yes, yeah. And the dad is probably similarly like in his own state of like, yeah, this is a good transition.
Good time for me to do this.
And Dr. Deloney was like, maybe this is just his way of really recognizing that he needs a career change, and that's something that you look at rather than.
Well, he's probably looking at the world. The guy's looking at the world, going, I don't want my kid involved in all this BS that's going on out there. Mm-hmm. I want to teach my kid. I want to train my kid. I want to spend time with my kid so that nowadays you can't tell, has a good foundation that they're going out into the world with, instead of listening to all these yahoos in the public sectors, the teachers and all this other stuff that's going on. And if I was a dad in that sense, I would do that too. I mean, and I am a dad, and I was a dad with a small child, and in 2nd grade we pulled him out of school and then we homeschooled him. He was too much for the school system, and they were going to dumb him down and put him in categories, and we just said no. We took him out, we homeschooled him. My mom homeschooled him for a while, and you finished it off, and it's all good. And that's what I did do, actually, back when things were way better than they are now. The reason I took my kid out of school was because he came home with books that said, drink Pepsi and Coke and eat these candies and eat these chips and watch these TV shows. And I took that book in to the principal, and I said, what is this? And he said, well, the corporations give us these books for free, so we're using them. And I said, you need to get rid of them. And he said, well, we're not going to do that. And then I decided to take my kid out of school, because we don't need that kind of indoctrination towards things that are harmful. So
yeah,
can't even imagine how parents keep their kids in school nowadays with all the stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
And people will say, well, I got to work, all this and that. Well, you can work somewhere where you can figure it out, and you can downgrade your lifestyle to the point where you can live off a very modest income, and you can get out there and make it work. Get your family involved, get you and your wife work together, not just at separate jobs. Figure it out. There's so many ways to make money online nowadays, and with all the technology. So, welcome to the Jon and Tara podcast.
Yeah.
This was the Hit It Hard edition.
Yep. So that was a good one. I think that was a good.
That was a good review. It wasn't a review roulette, but it was a review.
So, you want to keep going review roulette?
No, we can do a review roulette, but you can bring up whatever you want.
Okay, so in one of my podcasts, Wifey Wake Up podcast this week, I talked about a point where I had really decided to make some changes myself, and to rather than wait and expect
That's the Wifey Wake Up podcast with Tara. Every morning except Sunday.
wifeyschool.us.
Wifeyschool.us.
Yep. Actually, Sundays we're doing this podcast. So it was in a couple of ways I've come around to the topic of, there was a time where I just decided I can either see how things keep going the way they're going, which was not good as far as I was concerned. I think we both kind of were not too thrilled with how things were going, or I can wait for you to change and I could keep telling you how I'd like you to change. Or
how does that work?
That doesn't work well at all. It's like running into a brick wall.
Well,
or I could make some changes myself, and not just like simple, like, okay, I'll take out the garbage, but like, okay, I'm going to be a part of the greater solution that I think needs to be the solution. And was there, and I was talking about this and I realized maybe we haven't really talked about this, because I kind of just did it and wasn't like, so John, just so you know, so my hands are on my hips, just so you know, I'm making these changes and I hope you notice them because this is for us. I didn't even tell you. And now that I told you, did you? Okay.
Of course.
Do you have anything that you'd like to share?
No.
Because part of my point was to, if you're at this situation, that similar, like, you just don't know which way to go in your relationship. You keep meeting dead ends, and just like choosing to be the change. And but also, like I said, I didn't say to you, nor could I say, did you notice I just changed this? Did you notice I did this? Or I've been doing this for a week and you haven't even noticed, right? But to like actually make it a long-term, there's a really cute puppy over there.
Little baby lab. Totally
baby. I didn't expect you to see the changes, that for a number of reasons. You might be thinking that I'm just playing you for a while. If you're on to me, you might be saying, okay, let's see how long she can hold us up.
Are you a player?
I'm not really a player, but, and whatever other reasons, that, and if you hadn't been noticing it, that it would need to be noticed over time, to genuinely be felt, and to,
well, you made some major changes about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, in how you were asking me about things. And when it came to like financial things and other major things within our life, our household, our businesses, that kind of stuff. And you stopped coming to me in fear, because you were coming to me in fear quite a bit, and you were coming with a major, this will speak to guys, right? You were coming with a major planning thought process. Like, we have to plan, we have to plan. We have to plan, right guys? Plan, we got a plan. I got a list. I got bullet points. I got a spreadsheet. I got a plan.
Why is my voice all of a sudden turned into this?
Because that's what it sounds like to us. It's either that or wah, 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 wah.
Yeah.
But
this one's more exciting.
That sounds great. But guys are planning all the time, and the plan is to work, right? You work, you go to work every day, you go to work every week. Pretty soon you've gone to work for a month. Pretty soon you've gone to work for a year. Then you look how you can get ahead at work, whether you're learning new skills or you're getting a promotion because you've been there for a while and you've achieved. You've shown what you can achieve on the job, and your manager, your boss, whoever says, hey, I want you in this position, and this is going to pay an extra $15,000 a year, and and you're like, yeah, okay, and that's how guys do it, right? And they say, well, you know, most guys will be like, well, you know, at the end of the month we only have like $250, so let's just go to dinner. You know, and the woman will be like, hey, let's put half of it in a savings, and then he's like, well, then we can't go to the restaurant I want to go to. Damn
I don't know if that. Okay, I won't interject at this point.
Well, you know, it's, and what you started doing was you started coming to me with questions about what I thought, and not like, what do you think about how we're spending our money? You know, it was
not rhetorical questions, you're saying?
No, it was just, you know, it seems like things are going really well, and how are things going for you in the shop and at my business? And I would say some things, and you'd be like, oh, that's great. And then you'd be like, you know, what do you think, you know, if we're talking about planning a vacation a month ago, and oh yeah, we could do that. And you were more inquisitive than coming with a plan, right? You weren't usurping anything. You weren't trying to step in and say everything's failing, because that's what it comes across as, right? That we don't have enough money in savings, we're not paying all our bills on time, we're not, you know, we can't do this, we can't do that. And that's just telling a guy, you're failing, I want more than you can provide. And that just turns the guy off, right? It turns him away, it turns him to other things. And kudos to most guys. Most guys will stay true, they'll stay resilient, they'll stay on task, and they'll just be like, honey, you know, we're dealing with it, we're gonna get there, we're working on it, and let's talk about it this weekend or something like that. And if the woman can let go of it for a day or two, give the guy a little bit of space, give him a little bit of time to figure out how he wants to approach it. But you know, it's got to be in his time. And so you started saying, okay, if you want to talk about it, we can meet on, you know, Friday. We started doing Friday morning meetings, right? We were doing weekly meetings because we're both running business, but we started doing a specific Friday morning meeting, getting on the marker board. And you actually used my tactic against me, because I had told you for a couple of years you need to be getting on the marker board and drawing this out and with your business. And finally you said, can we get on the marker board and you can draw things out for me? And I don't even know if that was a tactic or if it was just you going, wow, my business is really there's so much convolution going on, there's so many things happening, I got to really separate them out. And John's been telling me for a couple of years to get on the marker board and draw it out, or use a mind map on the computer, you know, and that type of thing. And so you started acquiescing to some of the things I had given you as instructions on how to structure and build and at least look at your business, how to look at it, because it was growing very quickly. And you know, so when that happens, you really got to lay it out and look at it. And then you kind of took that whole process into our relationship, which was really good, because I don't need to plan a whole lot. You know, I'll just be like, hey, I got enough money, let's go to Brazil, you know. And you're like, what? Remember the first time, because you had said you wanted to go to Brazil to visit your host families that you stayed with. And then I came to you one month and I said, all right, let's plan, let's go. And you said no the first time, because you thought that's so expensive that, you know, we're gonna spend way too much money doing that. So, but yeah, that's what happened.
Well, it's kind of a case in point. And also, you know, we have very rather different comfort levels and views financially. And I started, rather than trying to convince you to see it from my perspective and use my method, yeah, I did use a bit of your tactics in order, A, to see it from your point of view, and B, to hopefully bridge the gap so that we could work together better in that realm.
Well, and that's what has to happen. You have to listen to each other, and then you have to take a little bit from one person, a little bit from the other person, put it together and kind of see how it fits, and maybe you have to mold it a little bit, maybe you have to flatten it out. Maybe you have to stretch it, you know, and maybe you can make something out of it, a little dinosaur or something. but you have to work with each other, and you have to work with the tools you have. If you need more tools, then there's lots of places to get the tools. You know, whether it's we were just in a meeting before this, and young gal, well, she's 28, almost 30. She said, I don't know how to do my taxes because she's starting a business, and we just told her it's really easy. You know, get a copy of TurboTax software. Put your business stuff in there, put all your stuff in there, the money you're going to spend, the money you're going to make, all the stuff, and then go through all the tutorials, and it'll teach you about your taxes. And you know, so when people are seeking and searching and asking questions, they get answers, right? Usually when couples are talking, they're talking about something they're worried about, and then they are only talking when they're upset, because they got to a point where they got upset, and so that pushed them to say something. Instead of being inquisitive, you started going, you ran away from being upset because you realized it was only hurting you, and then you got inquisitive. Like, how would you deal with this? Okay, we've got X number of dollars, X number of bills, how are you going to deal with it? And then shut the F up. You know, give your man space to give him a few minutes, right? Don't just be like, what, huh, when, what, you know, tell me, because that's going to shut him down, right? Because that's a big question. We have this much money and that many bills. What are we going to do? That's a gigantic question. It's a fundamental, gigantic question.
Well, it depends on how big your problem is. I mean, if it's 2 bills, it might.
But still a problem. If you can't pay them, it's still a problem.
It's still a problem.
So you got to give a little bit of time, a little bit of space. You can't just jump all over it.
So, you know, I hear that in some relationships, there are women who just spend the money. You know, it's just like if there's room on the credit card, they'll spend it. And I can't even fathom that. Like, to me, like, putting us in financial jeopardy or even a tight space does not feel good at all.
Well, I know a lot of guys that put limits on their credit cards, and they can actually stop the purchase as it's happening. So, well,
I would do that if I was the husband. I would definitely be that.
Talk about that, Tara, because I was going to say that, and people would probably be like, "Oh, you're an asshole." But what are you saying?
I think you as a couple need to have a firm understanding of what your monthly, weekly, daily limits are, and what you're spending. And especially if you're on a fixed income, well, pretty much any income. I mean, because even when you own your own businesses, you have a fixed income to
every income is a fixed income,
right? And so you have to have an understanding between the two of you of what you can spend, you know, what you need for housing, you know, the basics, right? Food, electricity, and then what can be spent outside of that, and then what is your investment plan? And investing for the future could be different for different couples, but just you have to be on the same page. Mm-hmm. And so that's step number 1. And if you already have that set, and then the person is constantly going over, I mean, like, I could see that there are exceptions, like now we can plan this ahead. I would be planning this ahead, but like I'm picking up chickens this week from a local farmer, but that's planned months ahead. So even if that's budgeted out, you know, that's being paid for in a lump sum rather than each month when you buy chickens at the store. And so I could see occasions where, you know, it's like, this deal was so good I couldn't pass it up. But you have like that buffer, right? Here I'm presenting Tara's ideal budgeting plan in concept. And so you'd have
I stopped listening a few minutes ago.
Well, I do this for myself in business too. It's like, okay, you have this amount of buffer for, you know, you found a great deal, and then you just have like an absolute cap. Like, there's a point where you just say no matter how good the deal is, no matter how much you've wanted it or whatever. There's an absolute cap. And if that person, even yourself, is the one who's constantly going over that cap, you have to put hard lines in place to stop, because otherwise what you're doing is you're jeopardizing your future. Like I said earlier, you're taking away you know, the interest that you'd have to pay, or just even the flat out principal that you have to pay and work extra hours, or the stress that you go through because you're thinking of how am I going to now pay this off,
to a degree,
or something happens, you know, a health incident happens, and then you have extra bills that you weren't expecting, but you're already strapped. Stressful just even talking about it. So that's why I would be like, that's why I'd be like, if you were the person in that situation, I'd be like, oh, that credit card disappeared. You know, if I couldn't cap it off.
That bank closed that card on you.
Yeah, it's gone. Oh.
Yeah, well,
yep.
You know,
because I think the stress that you cause into the future is way more on your relationship than that moment of you're cut off.
Yeah, well, I think guys are more forgiving in that respect. You know, I don't.
Well, it depends on how many times. I mean, yeah, you. All right, go ahead.
Well,
your turn.
I do know guys that turn off the cards, and I do know guys that, you know, allow it to keep going too long, and you know, it's
and you might have to end up doing the grocery shopping all together on the weekends for a while, so that, I mean, yeah, I would be a really bad husband, so that's why I'm not the guy. But
I'd be a really bad wife because I just don't like Nick.
Yeah, there's that. There's that. But yeah, I'd be a dictator in that sense. So it's a good thing we're in our respective roles here.
Yeah. All right, next topic.
And that's how Jon and Tara handle money. You're cut off.
Make more. Yeah. No, I don't know. You know, neither one of us overspend. You know, my expenditures for business are a lot bigger than most people's household yearly income. But it's you know, it's all relative. So yeah.
Yeah, it's very relative. Where did we start this? Oh, this was a topic. Oh, my changes that I had wondered if you had noticed. So what did it? You had mentioned that it kind of was alleviated you, gave you space.
Well, you brought me into the discussion, right? Instead of just talking at me. So it was more like, I have a couple of questions. Is it okay if I ask you now? And yes, or hey, you know, we were talking about doing this. Do you still want to do that? And then I'd be like, well, you know, time and money. And then you would kind of expound on what I would say, and then we could have a discussion. You know, it was a very, very, very good way to come to me. I can't say that for all guys, but I can say that, you know, women shouldn't be running and pointing the finger at the guy saying, you this, you that, you this. I think the more responsibility that you let a guy take on without correcting him, without telling him what to do, without constantly reminding him of his responsibilities, the more he'll take on. And you'll find out what his character is. You know, I mean, you know, and you got to give it a good 6 months. You know, you can't just be like, oh, well, I tried for 2 days and he didn't do this and he didn't do that. You know, and so that's why you got to be careful about.
I just thought of a really funny analogy.
That's why you got to be careful about. You got to be careful about the relationship you get into, right?
Okay. What do you mean? Say more about that.
Well, you got to know a bit about the person, right? You know, you and I got married relatively quickly, but my conversational skill level is pretty high. So I found out everything I needed to know about you, and then essentially proposed. I asked Tara, what would you say if I asked you to marry me? And she said, I would say yes. So I started planning the wedding.
Yep, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And now we've been married almost 24 years. So
there you go. Boom.
Yeah, boom.
Mic drop.
So what was your funny analogy?
Okay, so you're saying that, you need to give it some time, basically to let him pick up the responsibility, realize, maybe I'm elaborating in my own words, but...
Well, you're missing a lot. As a woman, you're missing a lot.
Okay, well, I was summarizing.
That guys do, unless the guy's sitting on the couch playing video games every day, all day. I mean, if you see him all day long, then there might be an issue.
Yeah.
If he's gone all day long, there probably isn't an issue. There's probably an impatience and an unrealistic desire on the behalf of the woman.
Okay, so...
Was that a deep enough breath? Do you need more breath?
I do need more breath. Bear with me for a moment here.
I'm bearing.
You might not like where this is going initially.
I'm bearing.
But, okay, there's 2 points, okay? The second point is about the woman, so let me get to that one, okay? About what you just said, the woman has to have patience. And
I'm waiting.
Okay.
It's like a half-hour preface.
Okay, so you said, you need to give it 6 months, to give him some time.
Yeah.
To whatever, right? Whatever the process is for him, right? And what came to my mind that was kind of funny is it's kind of like when you ask him to take out the garbage, and then it's like it's still sitting there. He's already gone outside and it's still sitting there, and then he comes back in and goes back outside. Right. I'm just saying it's like that. You need to give it some time. He might have been thinking of something else, wanted to finish it.
You don't have to remind him. What you need to do is
that's what I'm saying.
Call him into the kitchen.
Yes.
Ask him if he'd like. I just made the protein shake. Would you like some? And if he says no, then you reach around from behind and go down the front of his pants a little bit and say, "Could you take out the garbage?" And he'll be like, "Oh yeah." Yeah.
What was I supposed to remember? Right?
Yeah, there's much better ways than I told you to take it out a half hour ago. No.
So that leads to my second point.
Yeah.
That women having patience, and this was something that I strived to change in myself. Is A, question my expectations, and B, change my time frame, and just wait and see. And hopefully have some patience in the process.
There's a lot of patience going on there.
Yes. So kind of like the in the garbage analogy, they take out the garbage in the illustration, and yes, if you could add some sugar on top, maybe that would be the third step that you
Pour
could
some sugar on me.
So that was in not so many words, or maybe not how I originally thought of it, but was something that I was experimenting with. I think I'm squinting a lot.
Me matey.
So.
Are you squinting? Are you squinting, Tarantino?
What am I usual disguise?
That's comedy with Jon and Tara. Comedy.
Nice.
Mark Norman comedy.
So I kind of found it humorous when you're like, ladies, just give it some.
We're gonna have to make that a short because that's a total Mark Norman joke.
Totally.
Squinting Tarantino.
Good. If you didn't get the first one, we'll get the second one.
He'll like that one.
Yeah, there you go, Norm. Hey, Norm. Yeah.
Mark Normand.
Mark Normand.
Yeah, Mark or Norman, not Norm.
As I like to call him, my buddy, Norm.
Hey, Norm.
Hey, Norm.
Norm. Normal.
So,
normal.
The garbage analogy is like, give it some time, don't be on them right away about it. And so yeah,
it's my favorite garbage analogy ever.
Don't be on them right away.
Don't be on them right away.
Yeah, surprise them later.
Yeah, it's a garbage analogy.
Was there anything else that you noticed that
I think we should look up the definition of analogy.
Analogy? Analogous to?
Yeah.
No, I had one more question before moving on to another one. Do you think in your subjective experience that it actually helped to improve our financial situation? What was that?
No, it improved our mental emotional situation together. It may have had effects to a degree on our finances because we're both happier. Here's a lesson for everybody. The the least amount of wasted energy. Oh, it's an old car. Least amount of wasted energy gains you the most benefit in the long run. So if you're not arguing, if you're figuring things out together and accepting what you figured out at the time, because neither one of you are geniuses, right? Neither one of you are even thinking of planning things the same way. So you have to do this multiple times. That's why I say 6 months, right? You have to do this multiple times, over and over. Talk, sit down, plan, figure things out. How do you communicate? You know, when she says, I want to save money, and you're like, oh my God, she's going to put all our money in an account, and I'm not going to have any extra money to spend. And she's thinking $50 a week, and you're going, oh yeah, okay, we could do that.
Yeah.
You know, you're thinking she's thinking $500 a week, and now you don't have any spare money. You know, no pocket change.
You know me so well.
Well, you don't know because women will nominalize, right? They'll just say, I want to save money, and the guy's like, just some. We don't have any money to save. Yeah. You know, because the guy's like, you know, I'm not putting. You know, I have $200 at the end of the week after all the bills are paid. At the end of the month, I have $400. I'm not putting $400 in savings. And the woman might be like, well, could we just put 100 in there? So you got to get very definitive, right?
Yeah.
And then in the meantime, I mean, and then the guy still can say no, and the woman still can say yes, or she can say no and he can say yes. You know, you got to figure it out, and you got to realize, you know, you're in the same canoe. Right, you're both
it's
in
boat.
No, you're in a small canoe. A canoe.
Boat.
A canoe. It's a small canoe because most people aren't in a boat. So you're in the canoe and you're both paddling, and if you paddle in opposite directions, you're not going anywhere. And if you both paddle on the same side of the boat, you're going to go in circles. And so you've got to, you know, one is steering usually, and then paddling and doing this, and then steering, and then the person in the front is just paddling, right? So you got to work that together. Otherwise, and then if one person stands up and they both stand to the side of the boat, you're tipping over, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got to figure this out. I think the canoe is the best analogy because it's because they're so tipsy, right? Yeah. They're tippy.
But you can get through. You know, you can even get through reeds and stuff.
Yeah, they're made to go through the
cattails and all
cattails, and so you can carry it on your shoulder to portage it to somewhere else, mm-hmm. and to the next lake or the next creek or whatever. And yeah, I mean, it's if you can't figure out how to work together, then you might have to have things be separate, you know, or you might just be with the wrong person. You know, and that happens. I mean, even in marriages, right? People get married, people get divorced. A lot of times they say people get divorced over money, but generally it's because they didn't communicate. They let it get to the point where it was so bad that they can't communicate about it.
What you generally don't disagree with how I handle money from what you've said, but I'd be curious, like, what would be like absolute no's
from what I've said?
Well, or haven't seen.
I haven't said anything.
What would be your absolute, like, you know, no, that won't go in our household for money stuff if I were to do it or not do it? Because sometimes it just helps to know, like, where are the hard set boundaries, right? When you're especially starting out, like.
Well, I wouldn't have married you if I thought that you were going to be irresponsible.
Yeah, but what would be those things, like, more specifically? Name some of those things. It's a podcast for sake of discussion, John.
Well, like, for the longest time, you were not a signer on the business account, and you didn't have access to any of those records. Like, if you had demanded that early on, we would have had a lot of problems, you know, because I was in the mode of building a business, and I wasn't in the mode of sitting down and discussing what I was doing. I was not going to ask you any questions about anything, and you were not in a state of existence where you could adapt to what I was doing. You know, there were situations in our life you're having problems with your parents and that kind of stuff, and that was very disruptive. And so there was a lot of things that just didn't lend to me sitting down with you and saying, hey, I'm going to spend $250,000 this month, and I want to get your approval, or I want you to understand that. I mean, I was running with my hair on fire. You know, I was making decisions. I was training guys. I was dealing with new customers every day, and these were big customers. It wasn't like I was selling trinkets at a flea market.
Right. Big multi-billion-dollar companies. Yeah. And at the time that really ticked me off, when you would say something to that effect, and it might even tick off some women to think, oh, Tara seems perfectly capable. Nowadays, I am way more capable. And I also...
Yeah, and I would trust you now.
Well,
I couldn't trust you then because you didn't have experience.
Right, and one of the changes that I made, you'll remember this, on a couple of occasions, I was like, you're like, you want to be equals in a relationship. Well, I don't think you're ready, and that was even more of a challenge to me. And so I did make some major changes and did go through a number of crucibles to be more equal-like, or at least similar type experiences, still not to the level that you've been through, but enough to be able to understand. And so it would be like you're the professional racer, like you formerly were in motorsports.
Yeah.
And I was never, in this analogy, I was never the racer, but maybe, I've run a few laps with practice laps or something, so I got to hang out with the guys, and run a few hard laps, and, bumps and bruises and tough things, but not to the level that you've been at, but enough so that nowadays, like when I need to make a multiple $1,000 decision or purchase or payroll, or I understand on a deeper level. And even now, even though my payroll isn't as much as yours was at the height, and it's close enough, and I think you would agree, it's close enough where I can conceptually understand better. And similarly in other areas of business where I'm in the ballpark, at least.
Well, think about it this way. I had a director of operations that worked for me, and he was a competent guy, and he worked for me for 7 years. And in the end of the 6th year, I told him I'm going to basically take a year off and let him run things, and I still didn't let him make big financial decisions.
Yeah.
I didn't ask him if I was going to buy a machine. What do you think about this? Do we have the money?
Because the consequences would be on you no matter what.
I looked at the accounts. I looked at the receivables. I looked at the whole business. I looked at the work.
Yeah.
And I made the decision. And I would just tell guys, we're getting this machine. I want you to start learning how to use it right now. And that means you got to put time into reading manuals, going online, watching videos, that kind of stuff. And yeah. I would just that's what I did, and that's what I still do, and it's not.
And you're going to see things differently because you've been in the industry for so long. You know the trends. You know that when you buy a machine and you have a guy reading the manuals for a couple weeks and then training for a couple months, that you're paying for them to.
And you got, when you sit down, when you're making big financial decisions, sometimes you just got to sit with it. You got to sit with it by yourself.
Yeah.
You got to feel it, right? Mm-hmm. And I go by my guts, right? I do think about it, I do feel about it, but I go by my guts, and I go by what trends I see are happening. I go by my feeling about what's going to happen in the near future. And I sometimes you just need to sit. Sometimes I need to go for a bike ride.
Yeah. Sometimes
I would get out on my motorcycle and go for a ride for every day for a couple hours each day, just to have some time away to think.
And I understand
because some of these purchases were over $700,000, you know, just, and so it's like,
and that's just for the machine. That's not
just the machine.
It's not tooling. It's not
tool holders,
training time.
Yeah.
And I understand that better too. Like when I started going to a gym that's 40 minutes from our house, like, and I had to justify it to myself, not the training, but just like the drive. I'm like, but the drive is so helpful. And I understood better, you know, you wanting to go out on your motorcycle or something like that, which I don't think ever really, you would invite me along.
Yeah.
Not always, but.
You want to talk to the camera because of the noise in the background.
Yeah. But the gist is I understood it better than ever. And I think to go back, because this was actually the initial decision to make the changes that I talked about, that I think, to me, it was my Hail Mary. It was my Hail Mary pass. It's like, I'm going to throw my ego out of the equation. I'm going to throw everything that I reasonably can out of the window, out the door, and just change, because the way we were going, as far as I saw it, was going to lead to, I think, divorce, or which I didn't want, and I didn't want for a future. Then I certainly didn't want to live distantly, because I think that's really common too. If you don't divorce, you just like live separately together. But rather, I wanted to actually have a marriage, and I really saw that we would be in our next stage. No matter what, we would be in a next stage, but I could be a part of deciding what that next stage was going to look like.
Yeah.
And so when I said that, yeah, I do want to be your equal, it's not, in hindsight, I had to say that and do that in order to get to where we are, where I am, where we are.
That was a very bold statement.
And I still don't think that that is the result that I actually wanted. I think it got me to where we needed to be in our relationship.
Is that your brother?
It got me to where I needed to be in our relationship so we could get to the next stage. And I decided to take it upon myself to make changes, and not you, and just to try it. Just like, heck, I'm gonna give it a try. But I think what I got the new version of Tara for us.
Tara 2.0.
And for me. And in order to live more equally in a way, I would say it helped me to be more on par intellectually, intelligence-wise, in business for sure. Was I being a pirate? I typically do.
No, I was trying to be a pirate.
And I just think it was an absolutely necessary change that I'm so grateful that I did. And it was hard. Anyone remember the American Gladiators?
Yeah.
I loved watching it. See, like, I was the kid.
I wanted people to shoot tennis balls at me.
I'd love to do that. We should do that again. I'll do it.
The Bachman Gladiators.
So I was totally not athletic kid person growing up. I've had to work really hard at it. I just really admired that the people could do this, and it just looked like a lot of fun. And then I went through it like in real life, but not in real life, but metaphorically in real life, and I went through the gauntlet multiple times. But I think it's one of those things that's like, you know, unity through shared adversity. You know, we did go through these things together, but some of the things I went through separately, and you were able to help me, which helped me to see you in a different light, and appreciate and respect what you had been through and what you had to share with me because of that.
Yeah.
I think the coffee's kicking in.
I think the sugar kicked in over there. All right. Well, that's probably good for today. That was a good little.
That was a good.
It was pretty
solid.
Packed. A lot of information.
Right.
Packed in information. Yeah.
That's good. All right. You get a potent one today.
Jon and Tara podcast.
Like, subscribe, share. Thanks. Bye.